Congresswoman, I get stuck on the blues now and then. She'll have to forgive me.
Well, it might be a little appropriate for what's going on.
Yeah, I really do appreciate you calling in, by the way. This is Representative Kristi Noem, and I got to apologize as well. I put on my Facebook page that you were coming on so people could tune in and hear what you had to say, and I completely demolished your name. First off, spelled it with a C, and found somebody on the internet that spelled it with a GN instead of just an N.
Oh, sure.
And so, in other words, we have a Canadian garden gnome on the program right now speaking about this issue. That's the best I can come up with. So
you know what? That's okay with me. You'd be amazed at the amount of gnomes that I get as little gifts from people all over South Dakota. So I've just kind of started to embrace it and say, yes, I collect gnomes now.
Yeah, at some point when something gets ridiculous enough, you just go, okay, fine, I'll just roll with it. That's fine. Okay, so apparently, now I've already received some calls from people who were very curious about what Congress was doing about this whole debacle, and I'll let you lead in to explain, if you will, to people what this is all about. But also, you apparently were at the hearing that I was watching before I came on the air today, and would also like to know what came of this. So could you first explain to people how exactly these, I don't want to just call them soldiers who came home, our family who came home. How exactly were they defunded? What happened that their families couldn't get benefits for a family member that was killed in action?
Well, this part of what the Department of Defense is claiming, that with the federal government shutdown, that blocking this type of funding or not authorizing these paychecks and other benefits to the military and the families was something that they had to do because they didn't have the authority to move forward with it. We believed that we did. That they did have that authority to deem what would be essential and what should go forward, and also we passed bills that said specifically. In fact, I think we voted 3 times now. The first one was the Pay Our Military Act, which was over a week ago. We have the Pay Our Guard and Reserve Act in the House we passed as well, and now today we passed the Death Gratuity Act, which will tell and direct them to make these payments to our families that have lost members defending our country's freedoms. We've seen some things happen throughout this entire government shutdown and discussion that we feel as though there's parts that the administration has made more difficult and more heart-wrenching for people. But this truly is shameful, the fact that these families are waiting for that when certainly they're already dealing with a tragedy.
Well, and now correct me if I'm wrong, because I've been saying since the whole shutdown started that this really, I've been calling it a fake shutdown, or better yet, a slowdown. Is my number right? About 17% of the federal government is actually shut down?
I think that's probably true. I guess I haven't heard that number specifically, but every agency and department has the opportunity to deem essential activities, and those go forward.
Okay.
So we have a lot of thousands, hundreds of thousands of federal workers that are home and on furlough. We have tried to address this on the House side by funding portions of the government that we believe are essential and should keep getting going forward. But what we haven't seen is the Senate embrace those bills. We started with paying our military, paying our federal workers, but also making sure that programs such as the VA come off the table, that some of the nutritional programs like WIC continue to go forward. Children with cancer that are receiving cancer treatments could go forward. So, this hardship doesn't have to happen. It's just that the Democrats have been voting against it largely because they don't want to have to compromise at all.
Well, see, I guess it's a mentality that I'll never understand. Were it me, of course, I've spent my life working in the private sector, but were it me, and I'm, let's say, in some way working in the agency that's in charge of this program, and I see that these benefits are about to be cut off for grieving families. And I had a very emotional mom call this program yesterday who lost her son in Afghanistan in 2011, and she was in tears on the program explaining what she went through. And I never knew the military did all of this, as they brought her and 2 other family members to Dover, walked them through the grieving process. And she said she didn't know how emotionally she would have been able to handle it if that service wasn't available to them, considering she had just lost a son. So if I'm working in this department and I see that money's about to dry up, I wouldn't be sitting there wringing my hands thinking I don't have the authority. I would have immediately walked over probably to your office if I'm from South Dakota and sat down with you and said, what do we do here?
Yep, exactly. That's that's what I would have done too as well, and that's exactly what the Department of Defense should have done. Is if they did not believe that they had the authority, the instant they knew that the government would be slowing down or shut down, they should have asked for that authority so that this wouldn't have happened. I think since we've had this shutdown going on, we've lost 17 men and women who serve our country, and so we've got multiple families that have had to struggle through this time period when I believe it was unnecessary.
And I heard something, and this turned my stomach during the course of that hearing. I heard something about a backlog, and I'm trying. Well, go ahead.
Well, yeah, but definitely there is a backlog. You know how big it is. I didn't hear that clearly defined, but there shouldn't be, and that is something that shouldn't be acceptable and something that we have to fix. You know, part of these conversations are blamed upon the sequestration cuts and how hard they've hit our military. But largely we've seen the impacts there on our readiness level. We haven't heard them impacting these areas as often.
Well, the backlog, apparently, from what I was hearing, I was watching it over the Fox News feed on the internet, the backlog was there long before we ever had this slowdown.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, that's exactly right.
So there's a lot that they have to fix. So where do we stand now? And by that, I mean, when can these families receive the support that they were promised? Oh, and let me throw in as part of that, I have a doctor friend of mine that was a colonel, and he said, in part, our boys and girls in the military pay into this, which I had never, and I thought, well, if they paid into this as a part of their program, then it's sort of like government insurance, and how can that money dry up?
Yeah, I don't know for sure.
Yeah,
I'm guessing what I've heard as an explanation for why these weren't made or the payments didn't go forward was because the people weren't there to push the button to make sure that that actually got distributed. So I don't believe it's necessarily that the dollars weren't there or readily available.
The people weren't
they didn't have the people there to do it, which for me, that person just needs to be deemed essential.
Yeah.
To get them out the door.
That would make sense. I'm talking with Congresswoman Kristie Noem, and South Dakota. So I guess the first part of that question, though, and everybody wants to know, so when exactly can these families expect to get the support heading their way once again? I mean, it needs, as far as I'm concerned, it needs to happen this afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we passed another bill today because for some reason they didn't feel like they had a clear enough direction that they had the authority to do it. So we brought another bill to the floor in the House and passed it. Hopefully the Senate will expedite it, get it on the president's desk, and I believe he'll sign it. So it's really up to the Senate to do it, and I've heard that they will. I just haven't heard how quickly, and so we'll see how high of a priority arises for them.
Well,
for me, it needs to be done today.
Yeah, and what I really like to see, speaking of the president, and I'm not picking on this particular president, although I often do. I'm talking about presidents in general. In a situation like this is where the commander-in-chief should get up from his desk, go down to whomever he needs to find, and get in their face and be a commander-in-chief.
Yep.
You know, I mean, you shouldn't have to pass a bill to tell these people what to do. He should be down there really shoving his boot up someone's backside until they get it done.
Yep, absolutely. And we honestly believed that back September 29th, that the Pay Our Military Act gave them the authority already during a government shutdown to that would cover the death gratuities. They should go forward to the families of fallen heroes. So, you know, the fact that that's still a conversation a week later is unacceptable. And the president should have been the one. If he felt he didn't have the authority to do that within the department, he should have been on our doorstep the day the government was in question of shutting down and asking us for it.
Okay.